Farm4Profit podcast. Take a listen, have a blast. Farm4Profit podcast. Learn about farming while having a laugh. Farm4Profit podcast.
And listeners, welcome back to the Farm for Profit podcast. You got Tanner and Corey here to bring you another great Farm for Profit episode. This is the last profit show before we go to Farm Progress show. We're setting up today, aren't we?
No, this is after Farm Profit.
Oh, this is after. See, when we get ahead of schedule like this.
You're the scheduler, and here I am keeping you in line.
We are right after. I'm glad that you're here. This is just before Husker Harvest Days.
Yes.
That's right. So if you listeners are going to Husker Harvest Days, make sure you come and find us. We'll be hanging out with Sukup for most of the time, so come over there and see us.
Today's episode is brought to you by Pattern Ag. Predicting pest and pathogen risk in your fields. Don't gamble with your yields. Go to www.pattern.ag today.
Look at you.
You always give me crap because I don't ever get to it, so I have to beat you to it.
Jumping all over that. Yeah, today's been fun. We just got done doing another in-studio guest.
Yep.
It's always great to have guests in studio. We've got that today. If you've got guests you want us to talk to, make sure you send those to farm4profitllc@gmail.com. Also, leave us your reviews. Hit subscribe. Go over to YouTube. I know we keep saying that, but it's fun to go over to YouTube because there's more than just
You get to see us.
podcast
You
interviews
get to see
there.
us. Wave at you in the camera and all that, yeah.
Yeah, we got to make sure we now have that camera angle. Good job.
Or that's camera?
Way to make a little bit
Camera
more work
one,
for
camera
us.
two.
Which camera is it? So, yes, listeners, we appreciate everything that you do. We only are here because of what you've done and who you've told. So thanks for doing that. But let's not waste any more time.
Let's get into it.
Let's get right into an opportunity that I think is going to open some eyes and maybe get some of our listeners interested in bettering themselves, knowledge base-wise.
I'm very interested because I have, like I said, or like you said before we got on the mics, I am completely in the dark. I knew we were doing this with these guys, and I have no idea what we're going to talk about.
I love it. We've got the founders of Agris Academy here. We've got Jeff and Mike, and these guys have a lot of years of experience in grain trade. And we're going to start off with little stories and get some background out of them and then jump into what they're working on as a new project. So welcome to the podcast, guys.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Why don't we start with Jeff and give us a little bit of an introduction. Back us up with what you guys got going on.
Yeah, I did 30 years in the grain trade. I was one of those kids coming out of the 80s that didn't have a farm to go back to, and they send you on. And I always thought, well, if I'm going back to the farm, trading merchandise, that'd be a good skill to have, right?
Yeah.
And the next thing you know, you're married and you're having a family and you live in Minneapolis and you're working for a little grain company up there and you're getting to see the world, and 30 years goes by in a blink. So did that for the 30 years and said I've got enough of corporate America, and probably for the last 15 years I've also been living that dream as a first-gen farmer. So farm, my first love, don't tell my wife, and 30 years in the trade.
This is public information.
I was going to say, does she listen?
She doesn't.
Is she going to pull this up?
She maybe one of her friends.
Well, what if
might.
my wife does and then tells her?
So yeah,
Directly
it was just a great
It's not true,
opportunity.
Jen. It's not
and, I've known Mike for most of my 30 years career, and we've talked about it for a long time of getting together to do something, and just all the stars lined up to make this happen. We think it's important.
Yeah, I first met Jeff, had the sweetest mullet you've ever seen.
He had the sweetest mullet?
Shoulder blade length with the natural curls, kind of think the basis for Quiet Riot kind of look.
Are you sure they were natural?
I think they were, yeah.
No perm, no
Believe
perm
it or
for
not.
me, man.
It doesn't look that way now, but it does. It did then. I would say 2/3 of my career mirrored Jeff's. Spent that time in Cargill. The first, Jeff, was it 30, right, for you? 31 even, maybe? I was closer to 20. And fortunate to do just about everything you can do there commercially. Back then, they kind of ran you through the 3 or 4 merchandising roles in 5 years. And then I was patient zero in Ukraine. I think we'll talk a little bit about that later. Probably one of the cooler jobs I've ever had. And Jeff and I actually overlapped in the merger and acquisition and corporate strategy world. And I got kind of hooked on the corporate venturing side. Cargill had a whole venturing arm, and I spent the last 6 years there. And just got a little sick of the big company world. And prior to starting Agris with Jeff, I spent 12 years in either ag tech startups myself or on the venture capital side, which ended here in the spring. I spent about 5 years in venture capital and investing in early stage ag tech.
Wow. That's a lot.
That's a lot of years of experience.
And a lot of stuff.
And a lot of stuff. A lot of perspective.
Although I will say I'm so happy to be talking to guys in Carhartts versus guys in Patagonia vests. It's where I'm happier.
Oof, it's a good thing I left mine in the truck.
Tanner's in a polo with an Adidas golf polo. So
Adidas. It's the North Face and the Patagonia guys you got to worry about.
That's funny. Well, there was a lot in that introduction. Let's dive a little bit deeper into this. So you mentioned that you're farming in our first generation farmer.
Right. So, it was always the passion, just like every other, I'd say first gen, you got to build up some capital, right? And so, you're working for Cargill and you buy that piece of land across from Dad's. Now, Dad was a part-time farmer too, but you're starting to build it up. The farms in Ohio, the grain farms in Ohio, and first gens have to make sacrifices, right? So, I just booked tickets here a few minutes ago. We got a center pivot we want to go look at. You do what you got to do. And so started in
So you're going to fly out and check on the pivot.
Check on particularly this crop that's underneath this pivot.
He's become an amazing student of agronomy, so he's got a quiz coming up.
Yeah. So, one of the things, we've been working on getting smarter on the agronomy side. So we've joined a couple of peer groups. We've been listening to the right podcast without, ringing the bells. But I knew that I was going to make the transition to full-time, and so I knew I had to upgrade my agronomy skills. It wasn't good enough. Now, the only thing I feel like I do world-class in my farming operation is understand risk and merchandise grain, but I knew I had a long way to go. So we got a grain farm in Ohio, and then in Minnesota we have a direct-to-consumer. We bale 15, 20,000 small squares a year. Just live west of Minneapolis. There's just a ton of, you understand the markets that you're in, and there's lots of horses.
There's a beautiful installed base of demand.
It's funny you say direct consumer, but I guess it is. The horse is a consumer, so it's direct, but not normally what I think of when direct.
Well, to some extent, we're not putting them up on trucks, bailing bundles. We're taking them
because as he said that, I was thinking it was going to be honey or sweet corn or
no,
pumpkins. I don't know.
It's the idiot cubes. All my friends look at me.
Hey, I paid for a lot of beer in college bailing up small squares.
Yeah.
So
it's good to run around money for sure.
So it's been a great, because I have both hands. So I've played on one side on the grain side, right, and of course I'm farming and very active in the farm community, and I have a good sense of where money is made or not made, and that was part of the genesis of the whole Agris Academy thing. Was like, so much we're spending, in my opinion, way too much effort on things we can't control, and I watch just massive amounts of money that should go to the farmer. Not necessarily from the buyer, but from the marketplace, and should end up on the farmer's side of the ledger. And knowing exactly where money is made and lost in it, it's just a different perspective than what the entire industry, particularly we're talking about North America, sees today. So grew up a little bit out of a frustration. And just how are we going to educate? How are we going to teach the farmers to where this money is made?
So you're in Minneapolis, or
just west of the city.
And you've been up there for how long?
Oh gosh, when did we move up there? Like I spent some time in Iowa. I lived in McGregor and Dyke, but probably 94, 95.
So you guys were telling us some stories from the trading floor, and that's in Chicago, right? So,
well, Cargill has their own, so with all the lights and the tickers and the television sets. And all that kind of stuff, except for it's not just the futures. It's also moving real physical grain all over the world. Trains, barges, vessels coming in, all the deep, gory details.
What do you call that?
It's your trading floor and all your support. It just keeps, think of like concentric circles that keep moving out. And, it takes a lot of smarts and know-how to move that, massive volumes on really small margins. And they get really good at it. They are very good at it.
Yeah.
Wow.
And that's in Minneapolis?
Oh, yeah.
And other places, but that's where the main...
The U.S. side would be.
Okay.
So, Mike, you got into this line of business not having a tie to agriculture.
Not directly. It skipped a generation with my parents, but on the one side, you can trace, my family name, Rolfson, we're Danes. And you can trace way back into the early 1800s, that entire side of the family were farmers. In fact, they very cleverly in the late 1800s swapped out their Danish ground for Northwest Iowa. They got 6 acres in Iowa for everyone in Denmark. And my grandfather farmed, and all of his siblings farmed. So ironically, we grew up 15 minutes apart outside of Cincinnati. But my dad was from Faribault, Minnesota, and we would constantly get up there for the summers, and I just get crazy on the farm, and I got hooked on it that way, kind of indirectly. I have some farm ground today, and I vicariously farm through my renters, but that's the long and short of it. I learned way more from him than
Where did they get their ground in Northwest Iowa?
It was just outside of Lamar's, I think Germantown, if you know where that city is. So they were all in the Germantown area. Yeah.
That's great. That's only about 30 minutes from our family's farm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ice cream capital of the
North
world?
and west. Good ground, especially if you're getting 6-1.
Yeah, yeah.
No,
You can't get 6-1 anymore, even like if you're selling for development, even.
Right.
Because how much land prices have come up. It's
Yeah,
crazy.
yeah.
So.
Nice. Well, let's get a couple of stories before we jump into what you guys have cooking here with the future you. What can you tell us about the trading floor, or what it's like in big corporate ag dealing with such small margins?
Yeah, you just get into, the one thing you can say about it, they had great controls, right? One thing you learned is about, winning in the details, and that's how you made money. And in today's market, right, in today's world where you've got this hyper-competitive market, so, 20 years ago, these big corporations had some advantage. Of course, my previous employer had, people all over the world, and they're massive producers of poultry in places like Central America. They sell lysine in Brazil, and just you had this massive, and it created an advantage. But that has really just been competed out of the marketplace today. There's just so much technology. And so what really has the shift has been is you really make your money winning in the details on things that are not necessarily CBOT traded. Take all that great infrastructure and discipline that you instill and move it to a market where you can't sell the product because it's illiquid. There's no transparency. And so let's take something like fish oil. Okay, so when you feed a salmon, you actually feed it a veggie burger. But it's a carnivore. So the way you get it to eat the veggie burger is you sprinkle a little fish oil in it, and it tastes like fish, right? Now, fish oil is not a cheap product, but, we made by far the biggest single trade I ever made was in fish oil by understanding its relative value versus canola oil. And if the price got any lower, we were just going to put way more fish oil in that because you can substitute some canola oil into because it's cheaper, right?
Yeah.
And then you're the largest buyer in the world.
All of a sudden.
You're a whale.
You are. You're the whale. You can create your own weather. And, you understand relative value. And then you go out and there's no CBOT. There's no transparency.
There's no basis.
There's nowhere. So I can buy. So, we'd send our minions around the world to go out and buy the anchovy oil and the tuna oil from here quietly. It's done individually by call and before the market would ever have a sign to start rising. So if somebody tried to do that in corn today, the whole marketplace would just start rising.
Right.
That doesn't happen in these non-transparent markets. So you take a great organization that understands detail and you go and apply it in these opaque markets. And opaque, I'm going pretty extreme. You could also talk like corn spreads or something, or wheat relative value. I mean, we tell you about some of this crazy stuff that goes on there, but that is actually how the game is really. That's where the money has really been competed out of just get long corn or be short soybeans and stuff. It's hard even for the biggest.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's crazy. What was that one thing we talked about that they couldn't trade? It was illegal to trade on the Chicago board. God, it was earlier this spring. It was, and I thought it was a commodity. I'll have to think about it.
Yeah, it wasn't an oil. Wasn't it an oil?
I can't remember. Can't remember.
We'll
now.
come up with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. But then you hinted at it earlier, Mike, that you are patient zero in Ukraine. So I take patient zero as like the first one under the
first
knife.
idiot to go there.
Uh-huh.
I was 26 years old. Single. I spoke Russian. Had always raised my hand to go somewhere in the Soviet Union, and they tapped me on the shoulder one day. In fact, I got a call from the head of the business unit, and Cargill had their Lake Office Chateau where all those guys were. So you had to make the walk over there, and I'm thinking, am I getting canned? Why does he want to talk to me? And he said, yeah, you want to go to Ukraine? I'm like, heck yeah, I do. And he said, can you be there in 10 days? I'm like, I guess. It ended up being probably the best job I ever had. We got incorporated, team of 4 or 5 in the beginning, most of which had zero commercial skills whatsoever. They were all hustlers and smart, but had to kind of figure it out on the fly. And 5 years later when I left, I think we had almost $200 million invested and about a $75 million after-tax P&L. And but what was the most rewarding part was we brought some of this normalcy to the farm sector in Ukraine. These guys were getting absolutely screwed in the beginning. There was a ton of funny money. There probably still is, for all I know. But back then, just to see their eyes light up, saying, "Wait a second, you can pay me what?" We had an amazing margin structure there relative to the grain business, but you had to because of all the risk. But we. Even with all the corruption and all the sacks of cash flying around, they loved working with us just because we stuck to our contracts. We did what we were going to say we were going to do, and did all the little things that made people want to work with us. And my story that's somewhat similar to Jeff's, where you can take advantage as a trader where you don't have the amazing transparency you have in the U.S. grain business. So Cargill's the largest crusher of sunflowers in Western Europe. And we had really got a great origination base set up. And I just went to the guys in Amsterdam and I said, don't buy from anyone else. Don't buy from these yin-yang traders. Buy from me. Backstop me with the right price. I will make every farmer in this country ecstatic by giving them a price that they've never seen before. And we'll all be happy through the chain. We got 15,000-ton boats on charter, so we lowered that cost. Fobbed it up and just went. And for 2 straight years, I almost vacuumed the country dry of sunflowers, which made the ag sector ecstatic. But I'm single-handedly to blame for the export tax that has been on sunflowers ever since. But
that's why he left.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, my time's over here.
Yeah, but it was a classic example of there just isn't the same kind of price transparency, and that's where good traders can come in and make a market that's much easier to do than what you see with all the maturity here.
Yeah.
When and why did you learn Russian?
I was going to ask that too. Like, you just glazed over that.
It was the first thing I wrote down.
I was an economics major. I wanted a real major first, if you can call it that, but it was I would roughly call that a real major. And I wanted an international career, and I kind of flipped a coin between Chinese and Russian at the time, and chose Russian, and kind of the rest is history. I'm fascinated with Russian literature and culture and history and stuff like that too. So that's what got me there.
So what do you think about the war that's going on then? You were working.
We need a whole another podcast. But it's I just hope it ends in some middle ground way, because I just don't think under the current situation
it's certainly been affecting grains or commodities.
For sure.
Bit,
so. I have a ton of friends there who farm, and I keep in touch with them, and some of them are limping along. But it's definitely affecting production.
I couldn't believe we interviewed a lady she was in Kiev. Mm-hmm. On get bombs flying over and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Last night it was bombed pretty bad. I was like, and she was on like a high level on an apartment building. I'm like,
takes a lot to rattle a Ukrainian.
That's crazy.
Yeah, they're used to a lot more chaos than we are.
Yeah.
So they're very strong people in that respect.
Yep. Very cool.
All right, so you guys drove all the way down here from just outside of the cities because you've got a new project that you're working on. Because everything we've talked about so far has been in the past tense. I mean, it's good to get perspective, fun to get to know who our guests are. But now you've got something that not only do you want to offer to our listeners, but you want to offer to agriculture as a whole, is stemmed from all your years of experience, right? So, Jeff, what do we got going on?
That's right. So there were a few things, right? When you're going to sit down, and of course I had a few farm friends who are like, you're not going to just let this thing all this stuff. My friend's an electrician. He's like, it'd be like me giving up my license. So we've been looking at that, and there's some things that happened. One was a TikTok. I know you guys are out there, right? Yeah. So I'm watching TikTok. There's a guy down in the Carolinas. He's on a plantation farm, big farm. It's an early harvest, and the market is in a huge inverse. So down there, corn's coming off early. It's like old crop corn, and he's a good good content creator, seems like a nice guy, and he's flexing, he's showing off. It's about a 500,000 bushel facility.
Yeah.
And all I can think of is the only thing that should be stored in that place is air,
Yeah.
right? And so I start IMing back and forth, and I'm like, look, I mean, we know, Mike and I know the participants down there. I'm like, just deliver that grain off the combine. And he goes, well, we got these trucks, and we can only haul so fast out of the field. And I'm like, call Smithfield and tell them to come pick it up.
Yeah.
You got one of the biggest sucking sounds for grain on the
It's
planet.
old crop.
Right down the
They
road.
want trucks. We know how they think. They don't want trains at this time of year. They really don't want these trucks. And then he's like, well, we got a contract for December, right? And I'm like, just roll the contract to spot, right? There's just a whole number of things that could be done. I figured it was about a $750,000 opportunity to the farm. And not taking any more futures risks, but just knowing the skills and how to negotiate and what drives your buyer and all these little things. So that was kind of one example. Another example, it's November. We're up harvesting corn. We're on the last field, and we're in Minnesota. And for any of your listeners, it's getting late. You might have a snow in November, and you may not see that corn again until April or May, right? Yep. So the last field, and good friend of mine, we're up there in the plant that he's got the grain sold to, because he's completely full. All the space is full. Everything's dry. And they just say, no, we're not going to take it. Well, we know how the buyers work. They always overbuy and harvest, right? Because that's the cheapest basis. And then they hope somebody just doesn't deliver it, right? Yep. And then they make the carry from, say, Nove to Deese might be 15, 20 cents a bushel, which is a lot in the grain business. Yep. And I'm just talking to them. I'm like, that's not how this works. You have an Nove contract, and there are a set of rights and rules. Right, and if you know the rules and you know how the contracts are governed, you can come to a solution. It doesn't have to be confrontational. It's just you can't take the grain within the contracted period. And their solution was, well, go sell that corn to somebody else at probably the worst, right, the end of harvest basis. And then, in 2 weeks when I open, just pull grain out of your storage. Yeah. Right, well, so he's not going to earn the carry. I mean, it just wasn't really a fair kind of dealing. So a couple of those things came along, and we said, look, we know, and we've got some data, you can prove it. Futures marketing, if you divide your grain marketing in two pieces, your futures and your cash piece, your basis piece in hedgeable grains, the futures is a risk to be controlled. Okay, it's way too competitive. If the biggest, largest majors with millions of dollars of resources are struggling to consistently make money, what makes you think a broker or a newsletter is going to help you, right? Yeah. Now, there are a whole slew of things that we can coach and teach on how to manage futures risk and how to measure it and how to be best practice. We teach a lot of that stuff in the class. And then the cash is just a whole slew of things to understand. But farms have gotten big, right? They've got trucks, they've got bins, they've got, people. They can run themselves just with the merchandising skills. And so we know there's this huge gap. And being on my journey on the agronomy side, right, I joined two groups, right, two that are very high-end, high-yield agronomy classes, right, and I'm listening to the podcast. There's all kinds of educational opportunities. You can get it you can go get an agronomy degree. But, we did some surveying at the ag colleges. Like, nobody has a platform to teach the important stuff at a depth with the kind of experience that Mike and I have. So there's this glaring hole in the marketplace. And from my experience, my job, one of the things I also loved doing was teaching. You're in a career. I loved making a lot of money. I mean, it was fun. Right? Yeah. It's how you keep score. Yeah. And I've got a competitive streak, but I also love teaching young merchants. So I couldn't have thought of a better way to maybe make this next half of a career, right? Teaching and working with people. And like I said, Mike's he's a little humble, right? He's got a photographic memory. He can quote any movie, like some remote passage that you'll have. But he's a super smart guy, and he brings, as a team, I think it was just going to be super interesting. So, next thing you know, we're kind of testing it out. We test it out, and
we got to check before we were incorporated.
Yeah, we did. And then we kind of fired it up on the run last fall, and we took some clients. We have a retained business, so we take 6 a year. Let's call it the executive service. We go to the farms, we teach. We intentionally spread it out around the country to get different types of farms, different risks, different crops, that kind of thing, and we put that out, and just immediately got booked. I mean, just when people hear the talk and they really start to understand what we're espousing, it was just like boom, and it's just taken off from there. And we're just learning how do we get in front of more farmers, and then how do we get. We can't do it one-on-one. I love sitting in the shop office and
right.
teaching with a whiteboard,
Yep.
and it works, right? It's super rewarding, right? Just some of the. It's not uncommon for us to walk in and just look at what they've done and go, just think, here's the math, do this, and boom, it's paid for. Just like that. It's just done.
Yeah, we pay for a lot of our services in the first meeting.
It's not, it's
Through
just,
just some simple recalibration or just forcing them to measure a little better or just get the basics right. And you know, Jeff, I'll steal a story from Jeff. I still have my original merchant calculator, which is a simple solar-powered Casio, and it's got the plus, minus, and divide, and multiply and equal. The big buttons. This is not higher science or higher math or higher anything. It's just a lot of core principles that create immediate impact, and it's been really rewarding to see the help we're immediately giving to these folks.
I don't think we've said the name of it.
I said it in the beginning that these
Yeah.
are the founders of Agris Academy.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
we're talking about it now. It's called Agris Academy.
Yeah, it's not a peer group.
No, we didn't go that route. I'm in one of those peer groups. Are you going to have camps and do that? No. We've been working on how to do that, and so we set up a series of offerings. Obviously, we open for the 6. We choose those, and then the big thing we've got working for this fall is we've been talking to people. How do we teach on a broader effort? So we start doing some market survey, and we're watching some of the ag schools and how they offer, and we're like, well, we're going to leverage technology. So we've set up a class. It's going to be a master class, right? What we've done is we've gone down through, and we've got modules, which we call them. So it's going to be 10 weeks. It's going to be 2 hours kind of base instruction. We're going to have
Twice a week.
Twice a week. So you're looking at over 10 weeks, you're looking at like 40 hours of instruction, which is a lot. It's a little daunting.
But that's still a commitment, right? That's how you know somebody wants to be in it.
That's right. That's right. And then we're going to keep another hour because we end up ticking over into farm management because you can't extract the two. Like one of the big conversations we have with clients is when not to use an asset.
Or your cost of trucking, or
whatever. Do you really know that?
Know what that is?
Or when should you hire something instead of? So we wanted to open a little space. So we have kind of the core, and then every night we're just kind of maybe it's the crack cold one and relax and turn the record button off and just have an open session. So we've got that set up, and we're open. We're signing people up. We're going to have to limit, I'm sure, the number of people so we can deliver a good product because it's going to have office hours. If those of you have been, you're going to be able to call in, and if you have a specific question to your farm, we're going to transfer some intellectual property. Obviously, I've built some tools to make this easier, right? Whether that's how to analyze, if you want to put some options on and turn it into visual, or how to look at grain costs and some things like that. So we're going to tool that, and people can use their farm. In fact, we encourage it, right? And like any class, it's the more you put in, the more you get out. But we wanted to get the price point low enough that it's just a no-brainer, right? Especially when you're a new business, right? You just want to have an over.
You just want full, right?
You want it full, right? You want to have everybody, and then you concentrate on having a great experience.
Yep.
I'm just looking at Mike seems to be real relaxed, but I'm like, this is going to be a ton of work to have 2 hours of material that, by the way, we're going to send you before a class.
They'll have pre-reads.
They're going to have pre-reads. They're going to have homework, but oh my God, the return, because unlike. We don't want to pick on brokers or advisors too much. I have a broker. They serve a purpose. For their execution, they do a great job. It's, when you learn this stuff, it's repeatable. Because I get the story. Yeah, I had this great guy. He was an advisor. And he was great for this year, 2 years, and then, then we lost all the money. It's kind of like me going to Vegas for my bachelor party, right? This stuff, when you learn it, it's repeatable. Not only is it repeatable, you can give it to somebody else. And to be honest with you, we don't care. Yeah. If you want to teach your kid, if you want to have 2 people from the farm, we were just at a show the other night, and it was a lot of husband-wife. We see a lot of wives that are heavily involved.
Marketing side.
I've noticed that a lot more.
Yeah. There's just only in today's modern farm, you can only be, let's call it world-class or acceptable level on so many things. Yeah. Whether it's going to be mechanical or agronomy, financial, or in this market, it's a huge piece of the puzzle. And we see a lot of, we've got a mother-daughter team. We've got retiring father to just coming son, and these accounts. and it's super interesting what drives them. But the payback is, the big farms kind of sought us out because it's so easy, right? If you just put a penny on this, and we do that easy, right? There's just little tricks, right? But even a smaller farm, the paybacks are just that good, and so I just know where the money is lying, and like I said, it's unlike corporate America, it's super rewarding when somebody calls you up and said, God, this is so much better, or I'm so much more relaxed, or a lot of it's around confidence, right? So the class.
We had a call last week with a customer because it's a hot topic this time of year. We teach, measure your positions. And you obviously want to revise those as you get rain or don't get rain or whatever, and don't sandbag, let's get real numbers. And I think one of our clients said, you guys have fundamentally changed the way we think. And we've only been with them for 3-ish months, I think. And so it's great to just see that immediate impact.
Is this something you would do?
It sounds very interesting.
Hey, you're just up the road. You could grab a 6-pack and be there in a few hours. We would do the live studio audience.
We'll pick a southern metro location, save you a half hour.
Yeah, Tanner actually sent me a deal the other day that we can own our own airplane and it actually pays us money, and then we can fly. So I'll just fly up.
Okay.
Yeah, if that works.
Lay it on one of my hay fields, no problem.
Yeah,
We'll put out a windsock and a GPS coordinate.
I guess we can't get the jet then if we're going to land in a hayfield.
It'd be a little bit more difficult. That's correct. It would be just a little bit more difficult.
The Lear probably won't work.
So what's the ideal student? I'm going to call them students, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah?
What's the ideal candidate?
We have all types.
We
I would
all
say
types.
that you have to have a desire to learn, right? And want to learn it, right? And it's what you put into it. But we have a mother-daughter team where probably, the daughter's in her mid-20s, late 20s, and she's an agronomist. And she's fantastic, and, she's really pushing mom who's doing the grain marketing. The two of them are working, and she's gonna take over the farm. That's the other thing. Farming has changed. It's not necessarily might anymore, right? Yeah. You're seeing more and more women taking on production ag roles, and so our ideal customer just has to have a desire to learn. I think like our father son. I think the father knows how important it is. So if you're like thinking about transition in a farm, it's so important. So I think maybe the father's footing the bill.
Yeah.
Sure.
And he's getting what a gift.
Yeah.
To a son, and we hear that story all the time. Like I know Rob Sharkey had a guy on this. This was probably 6 months ago, and he dad died suddenly. Right, it happens unfortunately. And Dad had a brokerage account, and the broker was like, "Oh yeah, let's do this and do that," and the kid followed him. Well, eventually they burned the entire farm equity, working capital equity, saved the farm.
Right.
I hear that story all the time. It's just terrifying, right? But what a gift if you're thinking, because like I said, you can get this through technology, and you don't have to enroll in a college. You don't have to go get a 4-year degree, and it doesn't matter, young, old, male, female. You don't even have to be a hedged farm, right? Because these principles apply to, if you're selling alfalfa or dried beans or, canola or
on the livestock side.
And it can go to the livestock side too, right? There's just a lot of ways.
Well, you described fish oil when we first started talking.
Yeah.
It's all the same principle. We joke that we use merchandising principles in our day-to-day thinking,
We trade everything. Like if this is a bologna sandwich, we'd be like, "Can I get the peanut butter and jelly for that?" What can we?
I'm gassing up in Iowa before I go to Minnesota. I'm sorry. I'm gonna save $3-4 on my.
We appreciate that. Thank you. Our ethanol market. Thanks you.
That's right.
Yeah,
Corey's corn bases.
Just that's just the way we're wired to think. Once you've been taught by the best of the best, like we were.
So you guys have.
Well, we're gonna trade this interview for Corey a slot in your master class.
There you go.
There you go.
You guys have you guys said a bunch of things in the background and that you did. You're not doing any of those things anymore. This is what you're doing?
This is what we do.
Of course,
Besides farming?
Oh, if you just ask my wife, that's a hobby.
Okay.
but it's
Same thing our wives say about the podcast.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So no, this is what we do. Plus the farming, and of course the farming keeps me dead in touch with, what's going on in the sector.
Yep. So why? I know you said you like teaching, but you obviously had to have pretty comfortable wages, and you knew how to do it. Why do this?
Why waste a full-on career? And Mike might be saying, look, I was at 10 years old, I was a little pudgy kid living in a subdivision, and I ended up working on the neighbor's farm, working for $4 an hour and all the beer you could drink.
Yep.
And, the next thing you know, I'm just a wiry farm kid, right?
Yep.
With a really wild tan.
Yeah.
And, farming.
And a mullet.
And a mullet. And the farming put me through school, right? I mean, I had scholarships from the industry. If you think about what goes on even here in Ames, right? The industry was backing me either, locally with the local scholarships and my undergrads from Ohio State in the ag side of things. And then, ag put me all over the world. I mean, when you talk about having to have a passion to be, good at something, my passion is since I was old enough to remember has been farming.
And for me, it's like going back to the future. I mean, getting back into the nuts and bolts side and working with producers. And one thing that's amazing, we beat each other up, I think, in today's day trying to talk about all our differences. But what's been amazing to me, because, I've been around the world too in all things ag, and, a typical farmer somewhere in the world is such a similar animal. I don't care if it's a cassava farmer in Thailand or a palm oil guy in Indonesia or, a grain guy in Ukraine.
Mint grower
in
Indiana?
Northwest Indiana.
Very similar.
It must be that weather stress that turns us all into the same same animal.
Yeah. It's
So
just a great business to be in, and it's where I feel best.
Yeah, we really enjoy it. I mean, Mike and I like to be. We're here, right? We're like, hey, let's come. Yeah, let's road trip to
I'll
Iowa.
drive
Yeah,
down.
let's do it. And it's a lot different, a lot better feeling than working in a corporate America job after a while. It is.
This is not just going to be for corn and bean farmers. It's going to be for anybody.
It can be other. We're laughing because we have been talking. Some banks were like, it's a good thing if you have a banker. You want your banker to understand this, and we're talking about putting together a class just for bankers. Get them together, and so look at what a good risk plan is, and what do you have to do. So if you have a client that wants to go borrow a fair amount of working capital, here's some of the things we look for, right? And we'll just walk them down through there. And here are some signs that they're adding risk through their risk management program, not actually. Because that's a terrifying thing of a banker, right? Is all of a sudden the guy's speculating, and the next thing you know, what looks like a solid balance sheet isn't, right? So there are others that would be interested, we think, in expanding, whether you're a crop insurance agent or a banker or some other places that have come and approached us and said, this is interesting to teach our people to understand, or to take to our clients and bring another level, because, like I said, we're not brokers. We're not advisors. We don't even comment on risk. We've had some customers be real sheepish and go, I did this. And we're like, we don't judge, right? That's not we're here to teach about risk.
Teaching.
I tell you, right, some of the biggest farms that we work with, they take risks that I am uncomfortable with. From the farming side, right? If you're going to pay that kind of land rent and do those kind of things, they're risk-taking farmers. And so we're not here to tell you, right? We're here to say, did you think about these 6 things, right? Is this the right tool? Is your toolbox full? Yep. And did you pull the right tool out? Did you need a field culture? Did you need a disc? Did you need something else? Did you pull it out for the right conditions? And that's part of what we do.
So this class is specifically for those that hold the physical.
It doesn't have to be, but it helps.
If I didn't farm and I wanted to just get into trading or whatever.
It'll teach you some disciplines around call it the pure trading piece, but we're really trying to wrap this around a physical operation. But yes, we got approached here just the other day by somebody who was a heavy trader, and they're like, can you show me what's the magic bullet? Everybody's looking, whether you're in an agronomy class or this, right? Everybody's looking for that magic. And
the market's way too efficient.
We started off promising that as the Farm4Profit podcast. That's the only reason people come back, because we haven't given it to them.
Yeah, the magic bullet.
We're just holding it.
We get asked all the time, and I'm like, look, the magic bullet is the first. As soon as you can become a risk manager for your farming operation, and not a speculator. It sounds easy. Never had a customer get it on the first run. It will change you psychologically. Right, and then that's on the future side. Become a risk manager, not a speculator, on your operation based on your individual farm's profile, and learn the rest. Go to class, learn the gory details, learn how to negotiate, learn how your buyer makes money. All these little things. That's the combination, and it takes time, it takes practice, it takes dedication, like a lot of things in life.
I'd say I'm not there.
Nope.
And we hear that a lot, but
Yeah.
again, we don't judge, and we also hear, oh, I'm not a good marketer, or there's just sort of a reluctance to get down and learn these things, but it really is not that difficult. It's just putting the time into it and letting us teach you.
Right. I get I'm trying to think of the word. I just get tired of, we have so many things to do, and I will go ultra into like marketing for a while. Like a week or two, you watch the markets, and all of a sudden, I get busy with hogs, or I get busy trucking, or doing something else, and planting or whatever. And then I was like, I didn't even look at them. It's like, holy shit, they're up 60 cents or down 60 cents.
But again, you're the spectator sport, for lack of a better word, is watching the futures.
Yeah.
And those are important, and we talked about that role is. But again, we are more into, what do you do in an inverse? Always focus on basis first. Things like that are relatively independent of what the futures markets are doing at any one time, and the things that you can control.
We'll actually
not if it rained in Brazil.
We'll actually free your mind. Cancel your newsletter. Turn off the market report. You don't need it. By the time it gets to you,
Your market report comes at the close at 1:15 every
Right.
day. All that data synthesizes up to that data point. That's your
and so you can clear your mind of, like, people ask me, hey, what do you think's going to happen in the USDA report?
what
Didn't
just happened to
even
that
know there was
insurance.
one, right? Look, I've done this professionally because I know what goes in ahead of a USDA report. So let me give you an idea. They're going to know who prepared it, what school they went to, what statistical kind of models they usually use, and I say they in the USDA. They're going to know a history. They're going to know how the samples are collected, what the history is, and they're going to have a fleet of a dozen or more analysts working on this thing, not to find out what the price of corn is, but to find out what they think the USDA is going to print. Has nothing to do, only because that's how they make money. So to me, it's already in the market. I know how fast the market moves. By the time you hear, oh, China bought,
Yeah, China tender. Trust me, it's all been traded weeks before you.
because China had to, first they have their own grading training, so they're already in the market ahead of the time. They probably buy twice as much as they need because they love to speculate.
Sure.
Then they're going to go around and they're going to shop their bids for physical grain all over the marketplace, which means it's going to all the different majors, right? By the time it actually gets registered, which, by the way, you can register stuff and optional, everything legal, right? There's a set of rules. By the time you're on the farm gate, it's so old and so played out already. So I don't watch any of that, right? I focus on what I can control. It's just like weather in farming. Futures markets are like weather. There's some things you can do. You can pick hybrids. You can spread things out. You can do certain things in your operation to mitigate risk. That's the futures segment. Mitigate the risk. Carry as much risk as you want to your tolerance. Every farm's different. Beginning farmer probably can't take as much. Long, well-heeled farmer, lots of paid-for ground. Go ahead, take the risk on if you can. But the other piece is where you need to focus your time. And I just feel like the industry spends way too much time and money because it's a siren song. The futures is just pulling you in. It's pulling you back. Right? That's not where the money's laying. The money is laying on knowing all these details and being awesome at it. I was sitting one night on a tailgate, true story, largest farmer in our area, and we're going through cost. I'm a little farmer, right? And he squishes me. And we go down through cost. His land rent's a little higher than mine. He buys his chemicals cheaper, his seed cheaper. We kind of go down through it, and I'm kind of looking. He goes, well, you sell your grain higher. You work for this. I'm like, no. Not in the future sense, but in the merchandising sense and understanding the details, absolutely. I figured it was 30 or 40 cents a bushel.
Wow.
Every year, consistently, but not on the futures. I don't have, you and me, we trade futures equally, even today. Mm-hmm. I don't have any advantage there, but on this other stuff, right, learning these details is where 30 cents a bushel, we always use the 200 bushel goal. It's $60 an acre. Farm 1,000 acres of corn, right? $60,000. Mm-hmm. It matters.
And I'm rather confident that if you took these principles year in and year out, you would have at least that much. We've already seen examples of it being even higher than that, especially in a heavily inverted and volatile year like this. In the bean side, it can be dollars per bushel. Dollars.
So if it's pretty confident we can make a margin as such, because obviously that's what Farm4Profit is about. What's it cost us? What's the master class going to cost us? Do we know what the price is set at yet?
Yeah, I think we've kind of came in at that 2,450. I think.
Yeah, it's 2,450. Yeah.
Yeah, and you book that on the website, right? You go in, you put your information in. That's going to tell us. We're going to give you the Acres TV. I'm going to give them a little plug. Sorry, you guys can edit that out later.
Oh,
if
you're
you
good.
want. But Acres
We love Acres TV.
Acres has agreed to host the show, right? And so we'll have a login. You'll log in with the password we send you. You'll be into the environment.
You can record it on your own time if you can't make that night. And watch it at your leisure.
You can type in questions as we go. You know, that's planned. You can come see us if you want to be a live studio audience. So that is that offering of the piece. And it's not the only offering, but it's the one that would allow us to get to the most people. And like I said, we'll have to limit the total. We have some other offers, and we do, when we can fit it in, we'll go to a farm and we'll just do a crash day. It's kind of cool. It'll just get people, we transfer a little bit of intellectual property and we get them kind of organized. This is kind of what you need to learn. Sometimes it's a little bit of a job interview. It gets to be, how does it feel?
Yeah, a little rent to own.
Yeah.
Which is fun.
We'll do two-day seminars. Like if it's a seed dealership, if it's a bank or something, you want to bring something different to your grower, right? You can get us for the 2 days, and we get them into the schedule, and we basically teach called a high-speed class. You don't get the follow-up like even from the class, right? But you'll get a core, and you'll get some some things, some tools and stuff to work with, and it'll help maybe set you on. This is maybe where I need to spend more time or less time. So it's we try to get the offering. There's how do we get to the more and more of the farmers, and how do we get the word out? Because I do think my payback to the industry is bringing this piece of the puzzle that I think has just been missed.
I'll be honest with you. When we first started talking about this, I was like, really? I mean, because he knows, he interacts with farmers 100 times more than I do. I didn't believe that at least there was something out there like this, but there really isn't. And shockingly, it's the one thing when it comes down to eking out those extra cents per bushel every year. It's the one thing you can learn and the one thing you can control, independent of year, high price, low price, carry market, inverted market. The same principles apply year after year after year on the do's and don'ts.
Yep.
And
I think I had a AggieCon 235 at Iowa State. I think it was a marketing class, intro to markets type deal. And I was so excited to take that class. Like you said in the beginning, I'll be able to take this back to the farm and all that. But then it immediately just went over my head. Like, it was taught by a French guy, which, no hate to them, but it just had a dialect that I couldn't understand.
Whenever it's not your first language.
And his TA his teacher's assistant wasn't local either, and I was just like trying to understand stuff. I struggled with it bad.
And we can bring it down to the detail of the lives we lived and make it, every aspect of the teaching has a applicability to it, a story to it, a real world connection to it that's just going to be very differentiated.
I also have my own farm. It was actually a big discussion even in the last few weeks about, are you going to tell people what you do on your own farm? Because they all watch, right? So literally when we drive a truck in, sometimes they'll grab the truck receipt to see if I'm delivering on a contract or storage.
Yeah.
Because, you have to check it, right?
Yeah.
That kind of thing. But, we did decide, it's like, look, for my profile, we always preface it. For my profile, my farm, some irrigated, some not irrigated, farm with the bank, not farm with the bank, where you are, this is what I'm doing today. But I always have to preface that because it's one of the reasons I don't like pools. Because I was a pool manager, right? I managed a large pool of wheat, but I never knew any of the growers individually. Really.
Yeah.
I don't know what their individual risk. Not to say that some pool at some portion of your portfolio would be fine.
Sure. But
they don't know anything about your risk tolerance and even individually, right? Some people are fine with taking big risks and some are not, just psychologically. Yeah. So I finally said, okay, we'll go ahead and say, but it's for the learning. So here we'll give you, we call them nuggets. We'll give you a trick of the trade, right? When we go out and we put something on, we say, write the reasoning. So when you do a trade, if you make a sale, if you make a purchase, if you're buying,
especially in these large families,
right?
No one can give you a bunch of crap afterwards.
But
we all get on the same page as to why.
It really helps psychologically. Just write down why you did it, because one of the things we tell people all the time, and they teach you this really early when you go to merchandising school. not every listener will know what it was like to cultivate corn or side dress. Not so, maybe it's with the GPS, but always look forward. If you want to be a good, the discipline on the future setting is never look backwards, because the second you look back, if you're cultivating corn, you're making a mess up front, right?
And you got cultivator blight.
You got cultivator blight. That's right. In trading, this is one of these many tricks of the trade. Look, do your deal. Do it for the best reasons that you have at that moment. Write it down, and keep looking forward. Focus on the forward.
Yeah.
And
if you ever spent a second in a merchant meeting in Cargill, sort of referencing anything to what you did and how it pertains to the future, you'd probably have one more time to say that before they show you the door.
Okay.
I mean, it's just you are what we call it trading replacement. You always think about, even if you have a horrific position on, but what does the future
is it going to
hold?
get more horrific? Or
Yeah. I used it with my wife trading a stock recently that she just was being driven crazy by, because she was down a little bit. And I'm like, okay, you're down a little bit, but why did you buy this? Do you still feel that way?
Yeah.
And it was actually NVIDIA, the AI chip stock that has just probably gone up 200% this year.
Yeah.
And I'm like, remember that conversation we had in December when you were ready to just jump off a cliff? And it's not about what you bought it at or what happened. It's about what's going forward. And
So managing that psychology, there's just certain.
we do a lot of psychological tricks.
That is a psychological issue. Managing futures risk is a psychological risk, and there's all kinds of little things you can do. And managing the cash is an education question.
Yeah, I believe there's going to be a lot of value, and hopefully some of our listeners get in, because like I said, you're probably going to have to limit with the wealth of knowledge that the two of you have and the direction you plan to take this. I don't see it slowing down, especially as those that are members are having results, because they might not tell their neighbor.
It's true.
But they'll tell somebody else, because you just can't keep that a secret. It's almost too good to keep as a secret.
One thing we maybe didn't talk about too, that I think is a massive intangible, and we're hearing it with our customers as well. Once you start to pop these principles back to your buyer, they treat you differently.
Really?
That in and of itself is an intangible that will eke you out cents per bushel going forward, because you're not the person they can play with. And we've already had some, helped them, again, we can't ultimately advise to pull the trigger and all that stuff, but we can sort of feed them all the rationale and the strategic thinking that goes into it. And they are absolutely, they're like, who are you talking to? Where are you getting this from? And you'll be treated differently.
Yeah. We love to have personally, when we have the retained clients, we'll take 6 more this year. It takes a while to get them set up, but we like to have everybody in the farm at the meeting. These farms have gotten big. Here's something we've learned in the last year. Farms are growing, and it used to be, if 2 brothers wanted to farm, they went off and farmed, right? They started their farms and did that. Today, they farm together. And it's not just brothers. It's cousins. It's uncles. They're gaining scale because they've learned to cooperate. But what you end up having is specialization in the farm. And we like to have all 4, whatever. It's about 1,000. In corn and bean country, it's 1,000 to 1,500 acres per owner equity person. It just never seems the scale economy. You need that professional ownership, right? The guy who's going to run the planter, the combine, the grain dryer, right, in the system, and it kind of incrementally, plus or minus that 1,000 to 1,500. You want to talk about an area where you can get a lot of people upset? Have a bad contract amongst the guy who has to go market the grain. Well, if we teach all 4, even if somebody's not that interested, just at a high level, it creates some peace in one of the many areas that a family farming operation can have.
Going back to getting on the same page, documenting why you did it, so no one can give you too much crap about what happened after the fact.
I like that. I like that a lot.
I got 2 things.
Okay, you got 2?
One is the future, right? You always said look to the future. It doesn't matter what happened. Well, you got a class set up that's starting when this fall?
It'll start the week after Thanksgiving.
Week after Thanksgiving. And that goes for 10 weeks, was that?
Correct. A little bit of break, obviously, around the holidays. And,
Yep.
Basically, end of February.
And then you got 6 customers that you're calling your executive clients.
And we'll
Existing.
we'll have
We're
that,
taking
and then
6 more.
we'll take 6 more. We're just gonna sign those up.
Are you
now.
going to do more classes and open it up, or
Yeah, we're just gonna have to see a little bit how
Okay.
it goes, and obviously it gets easier a little bit for us because it's a lot of work. My expectation of what we're going to produce as a product to teach. Think about 2 hours of a slide presentation and constant
Yeah.
teaching and a production. You guys have got a nice.
but we'll
Anybody
be
who hasn't
telling
been here, this is a
stories.
nice studio.
Yeah, wait till
Right.
you see our next studio.
We'll have potty breaks and teach them, tell them some funny stories along the way
Right,
too.
but
So
we have
we'll
the
keep it fresh.
classroom space, and we'll continue to do it. We also want to be conscious, right? I mean, look, there's a busy season in North
Yeah.
America, right? And we're trying to figure out how to work around that. And obviously, the best time to do the core of this is to do it during the winter. We look at that and maybe our schedule about how challenging it's going to be to get out and do a 2-day or get out to an individual farm. It's going to be challenging in the winter, but we also are like, well, we can hire some production people, right? And maybe make this maybe a little easier on us.
What's your next one?
And it's, well, on top of that one, it's not to my next one yet. It's not something that you want to just record and just give it, as a like that. That's, people don't watch that, right? Or is it something that you're going to go?
No, I mean, no. There is a little bit of intellectual property, right? We want to have
Be
retain
stolen too easy.
So, and some of it will, but some of it's just hearing the dialogue, answering the live question, being able to come back to us with your specific farm. Like, okay, you want us to do this in as far as recording and understanding risk position. I've done this, but what about this since with my farm, or it's a different grain, or it's a non-hedgeable.
Right.
One thing about farming is just a million little things that can change it. So we think the classes to be taught in the class is going to be, and have both of us there in the interactions, just like you guys.
Yeah, we want it to be interactive.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. And then my other thing was, and maybe Mike, you already answered this, and how you deal with your buyers. But is there one thing you can give our listeners that, just a taste? Like, what does every farm do wrong?
This is super basic, but you can't manage what you don't measure. And we are absolute sticklers on, we ain't going to roll our sleeves up with you until you can come in to all of our meetings or all of our one-offs, or if you grab us on a Friday to quick talk through something, if you don't have your positions ready. We can't help you if you aren't developing that habit of always knowing what your position is. And again, this time of year, it's incredibly important as things change week to week in terms of how long or how long you're going to be with your actual yields. That's definitely one big one.
Yeah, they tell you, when you're lost, the first thing you need to do is to find out where you are. Right, and that's one of those key things. You have got to know what your risk is, and it's both a risk. And this time of year, we've done sessions here with our retained clients. The intersection between risk and physical. Okay, you're starting to get an idea on yield. You know what your physical capabilities are. You got a harvest ahead of you. There's an intersection in there. How do you leverage your merchandising around your physical assets? Because, hey, I know we're going to have to move some grain off the field this year. Or, you know what, it's going to be tough out there, and all of a sudden we're not going to have to move grain. So we don't necessarily have to deliver these. We're working on having that. There's these various intersections, we call them. One is merchandising and your physical. One is merchandising and your crop insurance, right? We call them these total, and there's ways around
Merchandising in your agronomic plan.
Yeah,
depending upon where
agronomic
you are
plan
in the
coming
United
spring, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we do some of that on our own farm, right, where we're looking at where that land is relative to the buyer. Is the market going to want early grain or not? And that's changing, what crop we're putting in or how many days long, which, by the way, then flows in. It takes pressure off of the rest of them. If I'm moving grain early, well, then maybe that fits into what we've got for storage capacity or frees up labor. And so the merchandising has a connection that can make farming a lot more fun and a lot easier. And by the way, more profitable,
Yeah.
right?
Our goals with our customers, our retained customers, is to not have them be in a position where they're absolutely forced to puke 10 loads at the lows of the lows.
Yeah.
Get a plan in place that avoids all that.
Yep.
I like it. Perfect. Well, there we go. That turned out to be a pretty good show.
Yeah.
We've got a question, though, we got to ask you as we wrap up. I'll do a little bit of a summary, and Corey will challenge our listeners. But if you could go back to yourself at age 18, and stand there and say something, whether you're going to listen or not, Every one of our guests gets asked this question. What would you go back and tell yourself at age 18? So think about that. We had both Jeff and Mike here today with Agris Academy. We talked about their upcoming masterclass. So not only do they have a small group of farmers that they have taken on as kind of one-on-one clients, they'll be signing up new ones again, but we're entertaining the option for our listeners to jump into this masterclass that'll kick off right after Thanksgiving. 10-week program, and they are going to help you do a lot of different things. They're going to help you fundamentally change the way you think. They're going to turn you into a risk manager, not a speculator. They know that, first of all, you need to be able to measure because you can't manage what you can't measure. Hopefully generate a larger ROI for your operation just based on the confidence that you have in the position of your farm. But this crash course will provide you a really in-depth look at the way these guys have compiled their years of experience, over 50 years together combined, to be able to create repeatable actions that might be able to help your farm in a period of transition. But ultimately, as you go through what your farm is up to, these guys might be able to help you out with the Agris Academy.
Yeah, you can do that all online. Just agrisacademy.com. You can sign up for the class.
When in doubt, call us. Our numbers are right on the homepage.
We have a blog, we
yeah.
put out every 2 weeks, and it's not on a butterfly flapping its wings as a brill. It'll be some relevant merchant thing that's happening that you can see. And, you can sign up for that online. We've really been working on our social media and e-commerce thing. That's all relatively new to us. So, that'd be great. And we look forward to signing up class, having a good full class, and then seeing where it takes us.
Yeah. So if you could go back to yourself at age 18, what would you say? Mike, you go first.
I was actually a really shy kid at 18. I'm not that way anymore, and I guess if I could sort of tell myself to be a little more open, a little more brazen, a little bit more confident, a little more risk-taking at that stage in my life, I think I probably would have had a little more fun, maybe gotten in trouble a couple times along the way, but you learn through that too, and just maybe learn myself a little quicker and my capabilities a little quicker.
I like that. Jeff?
Yeah, I was starting to think about.
We're both very introverted, but believe it or not,
That's hard to imagine.
We get less introverted with beer or whiskey, but no, I would say that I notoriously I never took enough risk. I tend to be relatively risk averse, and I think you got to be willing to take a little bit more, risk in life. As I looked at a lot of the opportunities that, maybe it's the ground you passed up, or leaving your day job to go out on your own. You kind of get addicted to the 2-week paycheck, and we haven't been doing that, and you're just fine. All of a sudden, you take that plunge, and it works out. So I'd say go ahead and take a little more risk than you're comfortable with, because I think then you get into a better place.
Push yourself and learn. I mean, I'll throw in one little half answer. There's so much in this world to learn, and I think a lot of times we get sucked down the rabbit hole of mindless junk. And if you could just spend half more of that time genuinely learning something, it makes you that much smarter and better off.
I erased my TikTok for that, and I still end up watching a bunch of videos.
It blows me away how much the U.S. farmer loves TikTok. It really does.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're kind of opposite of what you said when you're younger, that you should take less risk, or you can't take as much risk when you're older. But you walk over to Edward Jones over there, and they're like, "Well, you're younger, you can take more risk." But that's kind of funny.
I love it. Corey, you got a challenge?
Go to agrisacademy.com. It's AGRIS Academy.com. You can sign up there. I'm definitely going to look into it. And then you guys are also on Acres TV, right?
Yep, we do once a week. We do a short video. Maybe it's 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 5 minutes. Again, it's all merchant skill, something.
Sure. So check out the Acres TV app, too. I'm a big fan of Acres TV. We're not on it yet. We have a contract actually sitting in our email from Commodity Classic that we have just because of pure time, we just have not got onto it because we've got a lot of irons in the fire, but love what they're doing, and they got some good content, so check that out, too.
Great. Well, thanks, guys, for coming down and hanging out with us. We appreciate it. Hopefully our listeners check you out. And listeners, we appreciate you hanging out with us. But until next time, have a good one.